going to start y'all off with one real quick quote from myblood.com, and that is, "The need is constant, and it is our job to meet that need." So, my speech to that law was, state legislators should mandate, starting at age 18, for people to donate blood at least once a year. And as a blood donor myself, I can say that it's the utmost and it's the best service, in my opinion, to donate blood. You can surely go out on any given weekend, go do some yard work for a neighbor or a local friend down the road or anything like that. But for me, donating blood, you're saving lives, and that service alone is pretty much the best that I think. So, my main points today are going to be how I'm going to deal with religion views and people who have religious purposes that don't let them donate. I'm going to then go into diseases, and let's say you have a disease that's curable or uncurable, and how that will affect the policy of donating blood. And then lastly, the penalties, obviously, for not donating blood and everything like that. So let's off into the first main point, and that is religious views. The goal of my law is to have a plenty supply of blood available at any given hospital and anywhere in the country. There are, obviously religious views out there that say that they don't allow them to donate blood, and that's perfectly fine. Everyone has a religion, whether it's you or not, you believe in some sort of thing. And what I want to stay away with this law is many people could claim religion that they're not. Any person could say, "Oh, I'm this religion," and they can't exactly prove it. So I kind of want to stay away from that. And in order to comply with my law, if you have a religion, you're going to have someone donate on behalf of yourself. Now I'm going to talk about points throughout this speech. Okay? In my law, if you donate 1 pint of blood per year, that's a point. Okay? If you donate 3 times, that's 3 points, and so on and so forth. So in order to comply with my law, if you have a religious view, you will have to get someone to donate on behalf of you. Okay? So that's a point for them in your name. And obviously, if you have no one to donate, you're going to get no points. And if you have no points, you're not going to receive a blood transfusion if you are in an accident. And a typical car accident, according to Red Cross, is a typical car accident or victim nearly 100 pints of blood. Okay? So the need is definitely out there. And so if people don't donate, there'll be no blood for those who need it and who donate in these accidents. So that was really neat. Now we're going to go in and talk about diseases. And many people have diseases. I can go on a list, a bunch. And diseases, whether they're curable or uncurable, will affect this law and how people deal with it. And so, according to Red Cross Blood, someone needs a transfusion every 2 seconds. Okay, you count them, and they're coming. Okay, so if no one donates, they will not receive a transfusion according to my law. It's plain and simple. I know it's harsh, but it's plain and simple. If your disease is curable, then one will donate twice as much when they're uncured. According to Give Life 2, syphilis is a curable disease, and you have to wait 12 months once you have this disease to start donating. So if you've had syphilis for a year, and then you're cured, and then you wait the next 12 months, then you're available to donate. If you've been uneligible to donate for 2 years, the next 2 years you'll have to get 4 credits. Okay, so you'll possibly have to donate twice a year. And that's only to donate twice once you're cured, and you can now donate. And if a person has a permanent disease, okay, that's obviously one that you can't get rid of, you can help in other ways. Like I said earlier, you can have someone donate on behalf of you, call them up, a friend, family member, anything like that, or just someone randomly. And you say, hey, I have a disease, you go to donate, just by me on behalf of me. And what you can also do is you can go and volunteer. There's many places that let you go and volunteer, and you can earn points throughout the volunteering and stuff. And so that's the disease factor of my law, whether your disease is curable or uncurable. And so now let's talk about how this law will affect penalties. And let's say someone doesn't want to donate. And I've talked about it before. I brought it up in class earlier, and that is if you don't donate, you simply won't receive. I believe strongly in you have to give in order to receive, and this law is no different. According to Give Life, in 2006, more than 9 million people received transfusions. Okay, so people need them, and it's our job to go out there and donate so we can have blood on need. And let's say you're in a car accident also, and you're in a real bad car accident, and obviously if it's real bad enough for you to get a transfusion and stuff, you're not going to be able to get people to donate. So the doctor is going to have to call your parents for your emergency contact information and have them set up kind of like someone that can donate blood so you can get a point on your behalf, and so you can get blood transfusion. And you might be wondering, well, like, that's just strict, you know, like not being able to receive blood and stuff, that's harsh. But if you think about it, there's lots of laws that have penalties. You know, let's say speeding, you know, the penalty is a fine, you know, or community service. Let's say if you are driving intoxicated and you get caught a couple of times, you know, that law could be, you know, suspending your driver's license or even jail time. So my law is no different. I mean, it's just if you don't donate, you're not going to receive. That's sort of the penalty. So, in conclusion, I really think that often blood donors were saved lives, and in my law, it'll save yours. You know, talking to the state legislator about, you know, having people donate blood starting at age 18 for at least once a year will help this cause. And I've talked about how blood will affect, or my law will affect people with religious views, as well as diseases, whether they're curable or uncurable, and then going into the penalty and what the penalty would be for not donating. So I'm going to leave you all with a little quote from Give Blood, Give Life. And this quote is, "The need is constant, the gratification is instant, donate blood." Thank you.
Questions, please.
Yes.
You talked about if you donate, then you're saving a life. But have you thought about the fact that if with the point system, if that person doesn't have enough points, then and they don't receive a transfusion, that person could end up dying because, I mean, that's kind of I see it kind of counteracting.
Right. I see where you're coming with that view and everything like that. But I've heard of stories, and it's out there that, you know, people do go to hospitals, they don't have blood on supply, and so people just sit there, they can't get it quick enough, or they can't get the blood supply from the hospital, and so they end up dying just due to a blood loss. So I mean, it's out there, and I see where you're coming from, whether they need it immediately, you know, and stuff like that. And I mean, there's lots of laws out there that have strict penalties, and it's just another one of those type of things.
Talking about your religion, like they can't donate, so if they don't get the points, they can't receive blood. Isn't that kind of like discrimination? So how would you pass a law that is kind of?
Well, in a way, you could kind of call it discrimination, but then at the same time, there's lots of people who already go out and donate, and most donors donate, you know, a couple of times a year. And so what you could do is, in a way, you could call it discrimination, but I think at the same time, it would be fairly easy to go to your next door neighbor, your local friend, or, you know, someone who you know, and get a point that way. You know, you have 365 days to do it. I mean, it's not like it's just a 2-week thing and it's an hour never type of thing.
I'm going to just go ahead and say that this is probably the most strict penalties I've heard of for anything short of possibly murder under United States law. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, but I guess what I'm wondering is why jump all the way to these really strict penalties that are going to be a bureaucratic nightmare to enforce. I mean, because as I understand, and you mentioned in your previous speech that blood donation levels are at like 3%, isn't it? It's like really, really small number of people who donate. And if you just had like a financial or even a tax penalty, sort of like what with the healthcare law buying insurance, you would get a tax penalty if you didn't. I mean, wouldn't you imagine that would probably just from that increase the amount of people donating to save money, but, you know, significantly, like vastly. I'm just wondering, like, what led you to go all the way to these very strict rules instead of something along those lines?
I mean, I purely believe that, you know, service is a way of life, and of course, you know, there's going to be laws with there's going to be penalties with every law. At least in my opinion, there should be. There's just no way to enforce those. But you know, I went to this you know extent of the penalty just because, I mean, in my opinion, there's no other way to get people to donate. I mean, there's ways to donate now, and you know, like you said, it's 3%, and so you obviously could raise some tax and stuff like that, and have less different penalties. But you know, I just chose to come up with that and then probably.
One more question, please.
Okay, I kind of have like 2 questions-ish. First off, actually, I forgot my question. Oh yeah, so first off, so now if we increase this and we have this really strict penalty, well, you're definitely going to be having everybody donating. Now, if everybody's donating, aren't we going to have kind of an excess of blood?
Well, you possibly will, and in some locations, there's always going to be an excess of blood. You know, let's say a town of 500, you know, and all 500 people. Obviously, that's not, you know, listed. So let's say there's a town of 500, and about 500 people donate, that town's going to have an excess. You know, whether it has neighboring cities that are relatively small or large, I mean, you're always going to have a surplus of blood donations in hospitals.
Okay. And then what happens when, so procrastination is obviously a pretty common thing for people. So what happens when the majority of your, donations happen in like the last quartile of the year?
Well, I mean, you have to consider the massive amount of people in the United States. You know, you're not going to have every person in the U.S. donate towards the end of the year. And I know you could have a great vast majority of them, but you're not going to have everybody. So.
Thank you very much. I know we had a lot of questions, but we have to keep moving along. If you could just